Manuel worked at a busy gas station, and one particularly scorching day, he faced an endless stream of customers. The sun beat down relentlessly, and the lines of vehicles seemed never-ending. Despite the heat, Manuel served each customer with a smile, working efficiently and courteously. As the exhaustion began to creep in, he noticed an elderly woman slowly approaching. Her humble, worn clothes stood in stark contrast to the sleek, modern cars around her. She moved hesitantly, her face etched with concern, as if weighed down by invisible burdens. Manuel, sensing something was wrong, scanned the area to see if any of his co-workers could cover for him. He decided to take a brief pause, stepping towards the woman with the same warm smile he offered every customer. "Good afternoon, ma'am. Can I help you with something?" Manuel asked, trying to keep his voice steady despite the fatigue. The elderly woman looked up at him, her eyes filled with a mixture of relief and uncertainty. She struggled to find the words, pausing as if gathering the courage to speak. Finally, she took a deep breath. "My name is Dona Rosana," she said, her voice barely audible. "I filled up my car, but I forgot my wallet at home." Manuel immediately sensed the sincerity in her voice. Her genuine worry tugged at his heart. He knew situations like this could happen to anyone, and without a second thought, he felt the need to help. "Don't worry about it, Dona Rosana," he replied softly, trying to reassure her. "We'll sort this out." With a calm and confident gesture, Manuel reached into his own pocket, took out the necessary money, and handed it to her. "You can pay me back whenever it's convenient. I trust you," he added with a warm smile. Tears welled up in Dona Rosana's eyes. She was clearly overwhelmed by the unexpected kindness. "Thank you, young man," she said, her voice shaky with emotion. "I promise I'll return every cent." Manuel nodded, still smiling. "Please don't worry about that right now. What matters is that you're okay." The elderly woman grasped Manuel's hand for a moment, conveying her deep gratitude without needing to say more. He could feel the profound connection in that simple touch, a mutual understanding that transcended the situation. As she began to weep, her tears reflected both relief and heartfelt appreciation. "You have no idea how much this means to me," Dona Rosana managed to say through her sobs. With trembling hands, she rummaged through her old, worn bag and pulled out a small piece of paper. She carefully wrote her name and address on it, folding it gently before handing it to Manuel. "This is my address, so you know where to find me. You can trust me," she said, offering the note as a guarantee. Manuel accepted the paper, tucking it carefully into his uniform pocket. "I believe you, Dona Rosana," he responded kindly. Meanwhile, a few other employees had been watching the exchange from a distance, sharing skeptical glances. They were accustomed to dealing with difficult customers, and this level of generosity seemed out of place to them. "Manuel, you're too kind," one of his co-workers, Paolo, said, shaking his head. "You should be careful. Not everyone is as honest as they seem." Manuel shrugged, still smiling. "I'd rather trust people until they give me a reason not to," he replied calmly. "Everyone deserves a chance." Another employee, Marcos, smirked sarcastically. "That old lady's probably a scam artist. We get plenty of those around here." Manuel heard the offensive remarks and felt a knot form in his chest. He knew that cynicism and distrust were common in this environment, but he couldn't stand the thought of them treating Dona Rosana that way. Instead of joining in their negativity, he approached the elderly woman, who was still preparing to leave, and gently placed his hand on her shoulder. Dona Rosana looked up at him, her eyes still filled with gratitude, but also tinged with sadness from the hurtful words she had overheard. Manuel met her gaze firmly and, speaking loud enough for his co-workers to hear, said, "You don't need to worry about what they're saying. I believe in you. Their words don't matter." The employees who had made the rude comments fell silent, their expressions shifting between surprise and discomfort. Manuel's firm but kind stance made it clear that he would not tolerate any disrespect towards the elderly woman. Still with tears in her eyes, Dona Rosana gripped Manuel's hand once more, this time with a silent, powerful expression of thanks. "Thank you, son. Your kindness means more to me than you can imagine," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Manuel smiled, feeling a deep warmth in his chest, a kind of human connection that transcended the heat of the day. "It's nothing, Dona Rosana. I'm just here to help." She nodded, holding his hand for another brief moment before letting go and getting into her car. Wiping the tears from her face, she thanked him once again before driving away. Manuel waved as she left, feeling a profound sense of fulfillment. Later that day, however, his good deed took an unexpected turn. Just a few hours after helping Dona Rosana, Manuel was called into the office by the station manager. He could hardly believe what happened next. The manager, citing company policy, told him he was being let go. Despite his shock, Manuel left with his head held high. Little did he know, that very evening, someone would knock on his door, someone who would completely change the course of his life. Manuel stood quietly as the engine of Dona Rosana's car roared to life, watching her drive away until her vehicle disappeared from sight. As she left, a deep sense of satisfaction washed over him. Helping her, even in what seemed like a small way, gave him a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that amidst the hustle of the day, this act of kindness had made a real difference in someone's life. And for him, that was worth more than any physical effort his job required. As Manuel returned to his duties, he couldn't help but notice the lingering skeptical glances from some of his co-workers. Although no one made further sarcastic remarks, he knew his actions had left a strong impression. He hoped, if only for a moment, that his colleagues might reconsider their attitudes in the future. The sun continued to blaze intensely, but Manuel felt lighter, as though that simple act of generosity had brightened his day in a special way. He went back to work, aware of the wary looks from his peers, yet remained determined to maintain his belief in the goodness of people. Manuel understood that small gestures of kindness could have a far-reaching impact, even if others didn't always see it that way. As he continued attending to the next customers, his thoughts kept drifting back to Dona Rosana and the little piece of paper now resting in his pocket. He trusted that she would return, but beyond that, he knew his actions weren't about the money. Helping her came from a deeper place, a desire to do what was right regardless of the outcome. However, just minutes after she had left, the hostility of his co-workers resurfaced. He could hear murmurs and see the judgmental glances as he continued serving the remaining customers. Manuel tried to ignore them, focusing on his job. But when the day finally began to slow down and the flow of customers eased, Manuel thought he might get a moment to relax. His thoughts were soon interrupted, though, when the station manager, Mr. Antonio, called him into his office. The manager's face was unusually serious, an expression Manuel had rarely seen. "Manuel, I need to talk to you," Mr. Antonio said, gesturing to a chair across from his desk. Manuel sat down, a knot forming in his stomach. He sensed something was wrong. "I heard about what happened today," the manager began, carefully choosing his words. "One of the employees told me they saw you take money from the cash register to pay for a customer's fuel." Manuel's heart sank, a mix of indignation and sadness swelling inside him. Immediately, he shook his head, rejecting the accusation. "No, sir, I didn't do that," he replied firmly. "I used my own money to help the lady. She was in a tough spot, and I couldn't leave her stranded." Mr. Antonio stared at Manuel, carefully evaluating his sincerity. "So, you're saying you took money out of your own pocket to cover her fuel?" he asked, his tone still measured. "Yes," Manuel answered, his eyes reflecting the seriousness of his words. "I trusted her, and I was willing to risk my own money to help. It felt like the right thing to do." The manager remained silent for a few moments, clearly deep in thought. He had known Manuel for quite some time and was aware that he was an honest and dedicated employee. Still, he had to consider all the facts before making any decisions. "Manuel, your actions were very noble," Mr. Antonio finally said, his expression softening slightly. "But you have to understand that any handling of money, whether it's from the register or your personal funds, can be easily misinterpreted." Manuel nodded, understanding the manager's concern. "Yes, sir, I understand. It was an impulse to help someone in need. I didn't think about the potential consequences." The manager listened intently, recognizing the sincerity in Manuel's voice. Yet his expression remained serious, unchanged by the explanation. After a long sigh, Mr. Antonio spoke again. "I'm sorry, Manuel, but it's too late. If we make an exception here, others might think they can bend the rules or delay payments, and that could create problems. I understand your intentions were good, but we have to follow the company's policies." A chill ran down Manuel's spine. He knew he had acted with the best of intentions, but he hadn't expected it to result in such drastic consequences. The lack of empathy and understanding in the manager's tone was disheartening, especially after all the effort and dedication he had poured into his job. "Mr. Antonio, please try to understand," Manuel began, attempting to argue his case, but the manager raised his hand, cutting him off. "Manuel, I can't let this slide," Mr. Antonio continued. "The decision has already been made. Unfortunately, I'm going to need you to hand over your badge and keys." Manuel's heart sank. He knew his actions could be misunderstood, but he never imagined they would lead to his dismissal. With a heavy sigh, he reached into his pocket, pulled out his station badge, and placed it on the desk, along with the keys. "I hope you find a place where your good intentions are recognized and valued," Mr. Antonio said, his tone now softer but still firm. "But here, we have to follow the rules strictly." Manuel stood up, the weight of the situation pressing heavily on his shoulders. He nodded slightly in acknowledgement, thanked the manager, and left the office. The gas station, once a familiar place, now felt cold and impersonal. His co-workers cast curious glances his way, and some even seemed satisfied with the outcome. Walking slowly to his locker, Manuel gathered his few belongings and headed for the door. The sun was still shining brightly outside, but the heat no longer felt as intense, reflecting the heaviness in his heart. As he left the station, tears welled up in his eyes, and his heart ached from the loss of his job. Despite everything, though, Manuel knew he had done what he believed was right by helping Dona Rosana. Even in the face of dismissal, he had no regrets. His actions aligned with his principles, and that gave him a sense of integrity, even if it wasn't recognized by the company. As Manuel walked home, he held on to the quiet satisfaction that comes from doing what one believes is right, regardless of the consequences. Manuel reflected on everything that had happened, knowing deep down that he had acted with genuine compassion. Yet he also understood the need for rules and regulations in the workplace. However, the lack of empathy shown by the manager left him feeling bitter. Despite the sadness of losing his job, Manuel made a decision. He would not let this episode change who he was. He would continue to believe in kindness and help others whenever he could. After all, Manuel preferred a world where acts of generosity were the norm, not the exception. With that thought in mind, he resolved to move forward, determined to find a place where his actions would be appreciated, where he could continue making a difference in people's lives, even if only in modest but meaningful ways. As he arrived home, Manuel found Aurora, his mother, in the living room, busy with her daily activities. Her presence, always a source of warmth and understanding, was like a refuge amidst the emotional storm he was weathering. The sight of her calm and comfortable at home contrasted sharply with the whirlwind of emotions he carried within. Manuel knew she would sense his sadness, and he would have to be strong to face the moment. Yet, the thought of sharing his pain with someone who genuinely cared for him brought a sense of relief. He stepped into the living room, where the familiar atmosphere offered a quiet solace amidst his disappointment. The peaceful scene of the house, with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the soft sound of the radio in the background, provided a soothing contrast to the turmoil of his day. As he entered the room, Manuel still carried the weight of his tears and sorrow. But simply being home, close to his mother, brought him a fleeting sense of relief. He knew that despite the challenges ahead, the love and support of his mother would be a safe harbor, helping him face whatever came next. Aurora, noticing the dejected expression on Manuel's face, tried to break the silence with a gentle question. "How was your day, son?" she asked softly. Manuel hesitated for a moment, searching for the right words as the weight of his emotions and the feeling of failure gnawed at him. He knew he needed to tell his mother the truth, but the thought of revealing his loss made him feel even more vulnerable. Finally, he gathered his courage, looking at Aurora with a mixture of sadness and determination. "Mom, I need to tell you something. I lost my job today." Aurora's expression shifted to one of shock and concern. The worry etched deep into her features as she tried to comprehend what had happened. With visible effort, she stood up from the couch, her legs heavy and aching, and approached Manuel with genuine worry in her eyes. "What happened, dear?" she asked, her voice filled with tenderness and anxiety. Manuel felt a lump in his throat as he saw the concern in his mother's eyes, bracing himself to explain the situation, knowing that her support would be his anchor. Despite her physical limitations, Aurora's presence was a constant source of love and understanding. As he began to recount the events of the day, the feeling of being home, near someone who truly cared, filled his heart with comfort. He told Aurora everything about meeting Dona Rosana, the elderly woman who couldn't pay for her gas, and his decision to help her despite the hostility of his co-workers. With a trembling voice, he explained the conversation he had with the manager and how, in the end, it resulted in his dismissal. Aurora listened intently, her silence reflecting the deep concern she had always felt for her son. The strong bond between them, built on love and mutual support, was a solid pillar that would help him face the challenges ahead. As Manuel spoke, his younger sister, Luis, only 10 years old, entered the room. She sensed the sadness in her brother's voice and instinctively felt the need to come closer. Her eyes, filled with concern and empathy, showed a wisdom beyond her years. Luis walked over to Manuel and hugged him tightly. "Mano," she said softly, her voice both sweet and steady. "You did the right thing. What matters is that you helped someone who needed it. We'll figure it out, I'm sure." Luis' gesture and her words brought an unexpected comfort to Manuel. Her young wisdom and empathy offered a much-needed relief. He hugged her back, feeling the strength and warmth of his sister's support. Aurora watched the scene unfold with a bittersweet smile. Luis' maturity in handling the situation was a reflection of the loving, supportive environment that Aurora and Manuel had fostered in their home. The embrace and Luis' words of encouragement helped to dissipate some of the cloud hanging over Manuel, offering him a new perspective and a renewed sense of hope. As they parted from the embrace, Manuel looked at his sister and mother, feeling a wave of gratitude for the support and understanding they offered. He felt a little stronger, more ready to face whatever lay ahead. Knowing they would be by his side helped him believe that, despite the difficulties, there was a path forward and that together, they would find a solution. Though worry still lingered in her expression, Aurora did her best to stay calm, managing the situation with quiet strength. Despite the constant concern over family finances, her support for Manuel was unwavering. She knew that, no matter the financial challenges, her son's integrity and kindness were values she had nurtured with pride. Aurora looked at Manuel with a gaze full of understanding and encouragement, recognizing the courage and generosity he had always shown. "You've always had a generous heart, Manuel," she said softly, her voice laced with deep pride. "I believe that in the end, everything will work out. The kindness you showed today is something rare and precious." Manuel felt profound gratitude as he listened to his mother's words. Despite the frustration of losing his job and the financial strain his family faced, he was strengthened by Aurora's unwavering support and Luis' sympathy. He knew that if there was anything to be proud of, it was the fact that his actions were guided by genuine compassion. Even in the face of his dismissal, Manuel had no regrets. He had acted according to his principles, helping someone in need without expecting anything in return. To him, doing good for others, regardless of the consequences, was a value that transcended any obstacle. As Aurora observed her son's determination and dignity, she believed they would emerge from this situation stronger. She was certain that the kindness Manuel had shown would come back to him in some way, and that his actions, though not appreciated by the company, reflected the true character that mattered most. Despite the uncertainty that hung over them, their home became a place of support and hope. Aurora and Luis stood beside Manuel, offering the comfort and strength needed to face the days ahead, together as a united family. They were ready to face the challenges ahead and find a way to move forward, holding on to the hope that, eventually, things would change for the better. As Aurora and Luis sat in the living room, discussing how they might confront their current situation, the phone rang, breaking the tense silence that had settled over the room. The sound of the ringing was a reminder that life continued, even in the midst of their emotional storm. Manuel, still lost in thought about the future, stood up to answer the call. He picked up the phone, noticing that it was from an unknown number. With a mix of curiosity and a flicker of hope, he answered, "Hello," trying to hide the anxiety in his voice. On the other end of the line, a calm and friendly voice responded, "Hello, my name is Gustavo. I'm Dona Rosana's grandson, the lady you helped today at the gas station." Manuel's heart skipped a beat at the mention of Dona Rosana, and he immediately grew more attentive. "Ah, yes, of course. Hello, Gustavo. How can I help you?" Gustavo's voice remained warm and appreciative as he continued. "I just wanted to thank you for helping my grandmother. She told me everything that happened, and I was deeply moved by your generosity. She spoke so highly of your kindness." Feeling a mix of relief and curiosity, Manuel replied, "It was my pleasure to help her. It seemed like she really needed assistance, and I did what I felt was right." With genuine sincerity, Gustavo explained further, "My grandmother was truly touched by your gesture. She told me every detail when she got home, and I wanted to reach out to you as soon as I could. I also heard that you were dismissed from your job, and I'm very sorry to hear that." Manuel, touched by Gustavo's concern and empathy, responded firmly, "Don't worry about it, Gustavo. I have no regrets. Helping your grandmother was the right thing to do." There was a brief pause before Gustavo spoke again, his tone shifting slightly as he continued, "I understand, and that's exactly why I'm calling. I have a proposal for you. I'd like to repay you for the fuel, of course, but there's also something else I'd like to discuss. Would you be open to meeting with me?" Surprised by the offer and the kindness in Gustavo's voice, Manuel hesitated for a moment. He glanced over at Aurora and Luis, who were watching him with curiosity and hope. "Of course, Gustavo. I'd be happy to talk," Manuel replied, intrigued by the unexpected opportunity. Gustavo continued, expressing genuine gratitude. "My grandmother is very thankful for what you did, and we want to make sure we keep our word." Manuel felt a warmth spread through his chest as he listened to Gustavo. The sincerity in his voice and the intention to repay the cost of the fuel were gestures of respect and recognition that Manuel deeply appreciated. "I'm truly touched by your attitude, Gustavo. It will be a pleasure to meet with you. You can come by whenever it's convenient." Gustavo thanked Manuel, confirming the details of the visit. "Thank you for being so understanding. I'll come by as soon as I can. See you soon." After hanging up, Manuel stood there for a moment, still holding the phone, feeling a smile slowly form on his face. The unexpected call brought with it a renewed sense of hope and curiosity about what might come next. Turning to Aurora and Luis, who were both watching him attentively and full of anticipation, Manuel shared the news about the call. He felt a spark of excitement that he hadn't experienced in some time. Aurora and Luis listened closely, and their faces lit up as they realized that perhaps a solution was on the horizon. The hope that Manuel's generosity might be recognized and rewarded began to take shape, bringing a new perspective to their uncertain future. Aurora embraced Manuel, and the atmosphere in the living room filled with positive energy. The upcoming visit from Gustavo, along with his promise of repayment, brought the family a sense of relief that despite the challenges, Manuel's kindness and integrity were finally being acknowledged. The family, grateful for the support that seemed to arrive when least expected, eagerly prepared for Gustavo's visit. Not long after, Gustavo arrived at Manuel's home, bringing with him the money to repay the fuel Dona Rosana had used, along with a heartfelt thank you card. He handed the money to Manuel with a sincere smile, and Manuel, visibly moved by the kindness, accepted it with gratitude. In a gesture of hospitality, Manuel invited Gustavo to stay for a coffee. Upon entering the house, Gustavo was warmly greeted by Aurora, who led him to the living room. As the two settled in, Aurora prepared coffee and offered some simple treats. The conversation flowed easily, with Gustavo praising Manuel's actions and expressing his admiration for his kindness. Manuel, in turn, asked questions about Gustavo's family and Dona Rosana, showing genuine interest in their lives and experiences. As they talked, Gustavo couldn't help but notice how friendly and generous Manuel truly was. The cozy atmosphere of the living room, with its warm colors and the inviting scent of fresh coffee, seemed to mirror the welcoming nature of Manuel and his family. The simple coffee break turned into a pleasant conversation, where both men shared stories and experiences. Gustavo felt a connection with Manuel, appreciating the chance to get to know the person behind such an act of kindness. What began as a simple repayment transformed into the beginning of a true friendship. As the conversation deepened, Gustavo watched Manuel with growing admiration. Sensing that it was the right moment, he decided to share something important that he had been holding back. After a moment of hesitation, Gustavo revealed the truth. "My grandmother has been facing some memory problems recently. She was diagnosed with Alzheimer's," Gustavo said, his voice filled with sincerity and respect. He saw the surprise in Manuel's face, whose expression shifted to one of deep concern. Manuel listened intently as Gustavo continued. "She's a wonderful person, but the disease has made it difficult for her to remember things. I know it may have caused some confusion at the station, but even so, she remembered you, and she was deeply moved by your help." With a mix of sadness and gratitude, Gustavo added, "I wanted you to know that, despite the challenges my grandmother is going through, your kindness and patience meant the world to us. It's important for you to know that your act of generosity wasn't just recognized, it was truly appreciated." Although surprised by the revelation, Manuel felt a sense of relief as he began to understand the broader context of the situation. Learning about Dona Rosana's condition helped him piece together the difficulties she had faced that day. He was even more touched by the gravity of the situation and felt a deeper connection to the kindness he had shown. "I'm so sorry to hear that," Manuel responded softly, his heart heavy with empathy for Gustavo and his family. Manuel listened intently, feeling deep empathy and understanding as Gustavo shared more about his grandmother's condition. "I'm truly sorry to hear about your grandmother," Manuel said with heartfelt compassion. "I only did what I felt was right at that moment. If there's anything else you need, please don't hesitate to reach out." Gustavo, his voice laced with both concern and sincerity, continued, "We're trying to adjust to my grandmother's new health needs. We can't leave her alone anymore, and it's been a real challenge for all of us. Just today, she drove off without anyone noticing." He looked at Manuel with a mix of seriousness and gratitude. "Your gesture was incredibly moving for my family, especially during such a delicate and vulnerable time. Your kindness showed us that there are still good-hearted people in the world. Even without knowing our situation, you did the right thing." As Manuel listened, he felt a wave of empathy for the family, understanding the hardships they were facing. This revelation gave him a new perspective on the situation, and he felt grateful for having had the chance to help, even without knowing all the details. "I feel humbled, Gustavo. It was a simple gesture from the heart," Manuel said, his voice carrying the weight of modesty and sincerity. The atmosphere was charged with a sense of connection and mutual understanding. And then Gustavo, with a steady tone and a respectful gaze, revealed the real reason for his visit. "Actually, I'm the owner of the gas station where all of this happened, Manuel. That's why I want to make you an offer. As a token of appreciation for what you did, I'd like to offer you a position as the manager of my gas station. I'm deeply sorry you were unfairly dismissed, and Mr. Antonio has already been relieved of his duties." Manuel was completely taken aback. He stared at Gustavo, astonished and emotional, as the significance of the offer sank in. The idea of a job promotion, rather than a dismissal, especially during such a difficult time, was not just an acknowledgement of his kindness, but also a substantial opportunity for his future. With tears of gratitude welling up in his eyes, Manuel responded sincerely, "Gustavo, I don't know how to thank you enough. This means so much to me. I gratefully accept your offer, and I promise to give my very best to contribute to your business." Gustavo smiled, visibly relieved and happy to be able to help. "I'm glad to hear that, Manuel. Your generosity has touched us deeply, and I'm confident that you'll be a great asset to our team." What had begun as a simple conversation about an act of kindness had now transformed into a new opportunity for Manuel. It was a reminder that even in the darkest moments, hope and new possibilities could arise. Manuel, still in disbelief, listened as Gustavo continued, his tone both encouraging and firm. "I have complete confidence in you," Gustavo said, looking Manuel directly in the eyes. "I saw your compassion and dedication during the incident at the gas station, and I believe you're the perfect fit for this role." He paused briefly, allowing Manuel to absorb the significance of his words. "Tomorrow morning, you'll receive a brief training, and your position as manager will begin immediately. With your work ethic, compassion, and leadership skills, I'm certain you'll be a valuable addition to our team." Manuel was overwhelmed with emotion as he listened. The offer wasn't just a new job opportunity. It was a validation that his character and actions hadn't gone unnoticed. The prospect of starting a new chapter with more responsibilities and the chance to make a meaningful contribution filled him with a renewed sense of hope. With his voice trembling from emotion, Manuel responded, "Gustavo, your words mean more to me than you can imagine, not just because of the job offer, but because you've recognized the value of what I did. I'm deeply grateful for this opportunity, and I'm ready to give it my all." Gustavo, satisfied with Manuel's response, smiled warmly. "I'm looking forward to working with you, Manuel. I'm sure you'll bring a fresh perspective and great value to our team. Let's begin planning your training and the next steps." Manuel, feeling a mixture of relief and excitement, thanked Gustavo once again. This visit, which had begun as a gesture of gratitude, had transformed a difficult situation into an opportunity for growth and renewal. With a new job on the horizon and the recognition of his efforts and kindness, Manuel felt revitalized and ready to face the future. The chance to start anew and be part of something larger brought a sense of renewed purpose, affirming his belief that even in times of adversity, kindness and integrity could open unexpected doors and create new opportunities. With tears of gratitude in his eyes, Manuel thanked Gustavo once again. The act of kindness that had begun at the gas station had now blossomed into an extraordinary opportunity for both Manuel and his family. What had initially seemed like a simple gesture of generosity had evolved into a new, promising path in his life. The next morning, Manuel received his training and began his new role with determination. Renewed with a sense of purpose, Manuel carried with him his leadership skills, strong work ethic, and, most importantly, the same compassion that had led him to help Dona Rosana. In the first few months, Manuel quickly stood out. His dedication and competence in managing the gas station were evident to everyone. He was soon recognized for his ability to lead the team with both empathy and effectiveness. His contribution became essential in improving the station's operations, increasing customer satisfaction, and fostering a positive work environment. Manuel's efforts and commitment did not go unnoticed. He was praised not only by his supervisors but also by his colleagues. Even Paolo and Marcos, who had previously mocked his generosity toward Dona Rosana, changed their attitude, now respecting Manuel's leadership out of a mixture of admiration and fear of losing their jobs. The impact of his new position was profound, not just for him, but for his entire family. The financial stability that came with the promotion significantly eased the economic burdens that had long been a source of stress. For Aurora and Luis, seeing the positive transformation in Manuel's life brought immense relief and happiness. The new job allowed Manuel to provide a better life for his mother and sister. With the newfound financial security, he could comfortably cover all household expenses, bringing more comfort and improving the quality of life for everyone in the family. Manuel felt a deep sense of fulfillment and pride for having followed his heart and done what he believed was right, even when it had put his own job at risk. Now firmly established in his role as manager, Manuel continued to be a shining example of integrity and compassion. His journey not only brought about positive changes in his own life, but also inspired those around him to recognize the value of helping others and to believe in the inherent goodness of humanity. Gustavo's gesture had not only rewarded Manuel's generosity, but had also restored his faith in the world. The kindness Gustavo showed, along with the unexpected job offer, proved to Manuel that, despite the hardships and injustices he had faced, the universe still had ways of rewarding the good deeds one sows. This recognition became a source of immense comfort for Manuel. Over time, he continued to excel, leading the station with dedication and compassion, always striving to create a positive and welcoming atmosphere. Customers at the station began to notice the difference, often praising the friendly and efficient service. Manuel's experience became a testament to the fact that even the simplest acts of kindness can lead to unexpected connections and life-changing opportunities. What began as a moment of helping an elderly woman in need evolved into a lasting relationship and a fresh start for Manuel. His story and the bond he formed with Gustavo spread, inspiring others to act with generosity, showing that in the midst of adversity, kindness can indeed open doors and create new possibilities. Manuel's life had been transformed, and he continued to touch the lives of others with his story. His example illustrated that, even in the face of hardship, integrity and a generous heart can forge new opportunities and build a legacy of hope and inspiration. The cycle of kindness that started with a simple gesture at a gas station grew, proving that the good we do for others can return to us in the most surprising and enriching ways. Did you enjoy this story? Our channel appreciates your company. Don't forget to give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time.